Please like and subscribe to the channel if you find this video interesting and useful. Give me more ideas you want me to make. Enjoy watching the video. The town of Willow Creek, nestled comfortably amidst the rolling, verdant hills of America's heartland, possessed a charm that was both timeless and entirely predictable. Its streets, lined with mature oak trees, whispered tales of generations past, while the gentle murmur of daily life, the distant hum of traffic, the chirping of crickets at dusk, the laughter echoing from the town square, formed a familiar symphony. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets were hard-won and rarely kept, and where the rhythm of seasons dictated the pace of existence. In this quaint, yet often bustling, tableau lived Maggie Turner, a woman who, at 42, embodied the very spirit of Willow Creek's vibrant, if sometimes boisterous, energy. Maggie was a force of nature, a whirlwind of optimism and boundless enthusiasm. Her very presence seemed to brighten a room, her voice a cheerful, often loud, melody that filled the air, whether she was recounting a humorous anecdote at the local diner or passionately advocating for a new community garden project. A single mother, she had navigated life's challenges with a resilience that belied her perpetually sunny disposition, always finding the silver lining, always believing in the inherent good of people. For Maggie, life was meant to be lived out loud, embraced with open arms and an open heart. She saw no point in quiet contemplation when there was so much joy to be shared, so many experiences to be had, and so many conversations, lively, spirited, and occasionally over the top, to engage in. Her philosophy was simple: if you weren't living, you weren't truly existing. Her entire world, however, revolved around her daughter, Lily, an 18-year-old whose quiet beauty was as striking as her mother's vivacity. Lily possessed a delicate grace, her movements fluid and unassuming, her eyes the color of a deep forest pool, holding within them a contemplative depth that often seemed to hold a world of unspoken thoughts. But beneath this serene exterior lay a formidable beast: social anxiety. It was a constant, unwelcome companion, a shadow that clung to her, whispering doubts and fears whenever she ventured beyond the safety of her carefully constructed defenses. Lily's room wasn't just a space, it was her sanctuary, a fortress against the overwhelming glare of public scrutiny, the imagined judgment lurking in every fleeting glance. She loathed being the center of attention, the subject of even the most benign observation, preferring the comforting anonymity of the background, where she could observe without being observed. For Lily, silence was often a refuge and solitude a cherished friend. Despite the fierce, undeniable love that bound them, a love as deep and unwavering as the Willow Creek itself, a vast chasm of misunderstanding frequently stretched between Maggie and Lily. Their arguments, though rarely malicious, were a familiar, almost ritualistic, soundtrack to their lives. Each woman, convinced of the absolute righteousness of her own perspective, found herself utterly bewildered by the other's inability to grasp what seemed so painfully obvious. Lily, honestly, sometimes I just wish you could truly live a little. Be more real, experience things, put yourself out there. Maggie would exclaim, her hands gesticulating wildly, a flurry of maternal concern and exasperation. She simply couldn't comprehend why her beautiful, intelligent daughter would willingly choose to recede into herself, missing out on what Maggie perceived as the vibrant tapestry of youth. Lily, in turn, would often retreat further, her voice a soft murmur of polite, yet firm, exasperation. "Mom, you're just too much. You genuinely don't understand what it's like to be a modern girl, or what I need." The generational gap between them felt less like a simple difference in age and more like an unbridgeable canyon, a vast, silent space filled with unspoken frustrations and well-meaning, but ultimately misdirected advice. The annual Willow Creek High School Fall Festival, typically a highlight in the town's social calendar, was usually a chance for Maggie to shine, to mingle with friends, share hearty laughs, and perhaps even coax Lily into participating in some harmless, community-spirited festivity. This year, however, it had spiraled into one of their most intense and emotionally charged disagreements yet. Maggie, beaming with uncontainable pride, had spotted an opportunity to showcase what she believed was Lily's magnificent, though tragically hidden, vocal talent. She had, with characteristic boldness, attempted to persuade Lily to enter the festival's amateur singing competition, convinced that her daughter's inner brilliance would undoubtedly shine. Lily, however, had been utterly mortified at the mere suggestion, clinging to the comforting anonymity of the festival's fringes, her anxiety a palpable, almost suffocating, force around her. The evening, instead of being one of shared enjoyment, had ended with a series of terse, whispered exchanges that quickly escalated into a full-blown argument as they made their way back to their familiar porch. The festive lights of the fairgrounds fading behind them, replaced by the stark glow of their porch light. Honestly, Lily, sometimes I just wish you could actually see things from my perspective. To really feel what it's like to just be yourself out there, without a care in the world. Maggie's voice, usually so bright, was now edged with a raw frustration, her usual bubbly demeanor momentarily eclipsed by a deeper, more desperate maternal plea. She truly believed she was speaking from a place of love, urging her daughter towards a life she imagined was more fulfilling. Lily, her face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and indignation, retorted, her voice trembling slightly but firm in its conviction, "And I wish you could understand, truly understand, what it's like to just want to disappear. To not want everyone staring at you, judging you, all the time. You just don't get it." Her own desperation was clear, a plea for understanding that Maggie, in her own well-meaning way, seemed incapable of providing. In the heat of that moment, as sharp, unspoken words hung heavy in the cool night air, Maggie gestured wildly, her arms sweeping across the small, wrought-iron table on their porch. Her hand, in its impassioned arc, accidentally knocked against a small, intricately embroidered velvet pouch. It was a whimsical trinket she'd purchased earlier that day from Curio and Charm, the town's renowned, if slightly dusty, antique shop, a place known for its eclectic collection of forgotten treasures and obscure curiosities. The impact caused the pouch to spill open, and from its depths tumbled a gleaming object. It was a silver chain, intricately woven, which cradled a pendant, an ancient-looking amulet crafted from dark, polished wood, its surface smooth and aged. Inlaid into the wood were what appeared to be tiny, iridescent moonstone chips, catching the porch light with a faint, almost ethereal glow. It was an instinct, a primal reaction perhaps, to the glinting object. Without conscious thought, both Maggie and Lily, still locked in their verbal sparring match, instinctively reached out. Their fingers, a mother's and a daughter's, brushed against the cool, smooth surface of the pendant simultaneously, a shared touch that transcended their immediate anger. As their skin made contact, a strange, undeniable tingle shot through them, an electrifying sensation, like static electricity mixed with something far more ancient and powerful, seemed to course through their veins. The very air around them appeared to shimmer, distorting for a fleeting, almost imperceptible second, like heat rising from pavement on a summer day. A low, resonant hum, too deep to be merely atmospheric, vibrated through the porch, throbbing in the very marrow of their bones. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, it was gone. The shimmering ceased, the hum faded, leaving only the lingering scent of damp earth and the heavy silence of their unresolved argument hanging in the air. Neither Maggie nor Lily, still reeling from their emotional confrontation, paid any attention to the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere, nor the way the moonstone chips on the amulet seemed to glow just a fraction brighter, pulsing with an inner light before dimming back to their dull, unassuming luster. They simply retreated to their respective corners, the echoes of their argument reverberating in the quiet night, utterly oblivious to the profound cosmic joke that had just been played upon them. The antique necklace lay innocently on the porch floor, its secret power now fully awakened, poised to irrevocably turn their worlds upside down, granting their frustrated wishes in the most literal and unexpected way imaginable. The first rays of dawn, tentative and golden, pierced through the blinds of Maggie Turner's bedroom, casting long, sleepy shadows across the familiar floral wallpaper. A gentle breeze, carrying the scent of dew-kissed grass and distant coffee brewing, stirred the curtains. Maggie, usually a morning person, prone to leaping out of bed with a cheerful, if sometimes startling, exuberance, felt a peculiar sense of sluggishness this particular morning. Her limbs felt lighter. Almost too light, as if gravity had decided to take a slight vacation where her body was concerned. A subtle ache, unfamiliar and persistent, throbbed in the back of her head, a dull echo of the previous night's heated exchange with Lily. She groaned softly, stretching out an arm, expecting to feel the comforting, familiar weight of her own body, the well-worn contours of her usual pillow. But something was undeniably, fundamentally wrong. Her arm, when she finally opened her eyes and blinked away the last vestiges of sleep, was slender, almost delicate, far too slender to be her own robust, 42-year-old arm. Her hands, instead of being adorned with the faint, telltale lines of years of hard work and motherly care, were smooth, unblemished, and undeniably youthful. She stared at them, flexing her fingers, a growing sense of panic blossoming in her chest. This wasn't right. This wasn't her. A quick, frantic glance around the room confirmed her mounting dread. The room itself was familiar, yet seen through an entirely new lens. The poster of a dreamy indie band on the wall, the messy pile of fashion magazines on the nightstand, the discarded art supplies scattered across the desk. This was unequivocally Lily's room, her daughter's sanctuary. Maggie's heart began to hammer against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief. "No, no, no," she whispered, but the voice that emerged was not her own rich, melodic mezzo-soprano. It was higher, softer, laced with a familiar, youthful tremor. It was Lily's voice. Scrambling out of bed, Maggie, or rather, Lily's body inhabited by Maggie, caught a glimpse of herself in the full-length mirror on the closet door. A gasp, sharp and involuntary, escaped her lips. Staring back was Lily. Her daughter's lithe, 18-year-old frame, her long, flowing brown hair, her wide, intelligent eyes. But in those eyes, a frantic, bewildered expression flickered, an expression that was undeniably Maggie's. Her mind raced, grappling with the impossible, the utterly fantastical. The argument. The antique necklace. The strange tingling. It couldn't be. It was utterly ludicrous. But the undeniable evidence stared back at her from the mirror. Meanwhile, across the hall, in what was usually Maggie's cheerful, sun-drenched bedroom, another, equally disorienting awakening was unfolding. Lily, accustomed to the slow, deliberate dawn of her own anxiety-ridden mornings, found herself waking with an unnerving jolt. Her body felt heavy, unfamiliar. Her eyelids, when they finally fluttered open, felt thicker, her vision slightly blurrier than usual. She blinked, trying to clear the lingering fog of sleep, but the world still seemed to shimmer with an odd, surreal quality. A deep groan escaped her lips, a sound far too resonant, far too mature to be her own. It was a sound she recognized instantly, a sound that usually preceded her mother's boisterous, "Good morning, sunshine." Her breath caught in her throat. She pushed herself up, her muscles protesting with an unfamiliar stiffness, a dull ache in her lower back that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. This body felt solid, grounded, and utterly, terrifyingly, not hers. Her gaze fell upon her hands. They were larger, the skin a little rougher, adorned with the faint, telltale lines of a life lived. She saw a small scar above the knuckle of her left index finger, a relic from a clumsy baking incident years ago, Maggie's scar. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at her skin. What is happening?" she whispered, but the voice was a full-bodied, slightly gravelly alto. It was her mother's voice. The realization struck her with the force of a physical blow. Scrambling out of bed, her new, heavier limbs feeling strangely uncoordinated, Lily, or rather, Maggie's body inhabited by Lily, stumbled towards the full-length mirror. The reflection that greeted her made her stifle a scream. It was Maggie. Her mother's familiar, vivacious face, her slightly disheveled blonde hair, her expressive blue eyes. But in those eyes, a look of profound terror, of utter bewilderment, was frozen, a look that belonged undeniably to Lily. Her mind, usually so prone to overthinking, was now a maelstrom of chaotic thoughts. The argument. The weird necklace from that antique shop. The strange sensation as they touched it. It was impossible. It was a nightmare. But this terrifying, solid reality in the mirror was inescapable. A simultaneous, blood-curdling scream erupted from both bedrooms, echoing through the quiet morning air of Willow Creek. Shrieked the voice from Lily's room. Lily, bellowed the voice from Maggie's room. The house, usually a bastion of relative peace in the mornings, was now filled with the sound of frantic movement, hurried footsteps, and gasps of utter disbelief. Two women, in two different bodies, were about to embark on the most surreal day of their lives, their worlds irrevocably altered by a simple, ancient piece of jewelry. The chasm of misunderstanding that had separated them now manifested in the most literal, terrifying way imaginable, forcing them into each other's shoes, quite literally, and with a shock that would ripple through every fiber of their beings. The magic of Willow Creek had just played its most unexpected hand. The two screams, sharp and laced with pure, unadulterated panic, collided in the narrow hallway of the Turner home. They were sounds ripped from the depths of disbelief, primal expressions of an impossible reality. Maggie, trapped within the slender, unfamiliar confines of Lily's 18-year-old body, stumbled out of her daughter's room, her heart a frantic drumbeat against her new, youthful ribs. Her mind was a whirlwind of frantic questions, illogical theories, and the chilling certainty that this was not a dream. The morning sunlight, usually a source of comfort, now seemed to mock her, illuminating the bewildering change with unforgiving clarity. Lily. Oh my God, Lily. What in the sweet name of all that is holy is happening? Maggie's voice, Lily's voice, was high-pitched and breathless, brimming with a terror that felt entirely foreign in its youthful timbre. Her own voice, her usual robust mezzo-soprano, now seemed a distant, beloved memory. She gripped the doorframe, her new, delicate fingers trembling uncontrollably. Every movement felt alien, disconnected, as if she were piloting a sophisticated, yet unfamiliar, piece of machinery. The world seemed subtly different from this lower vantage point, the air lighter, the sense of the house sharper. At the exact same moment, from Maggie's bedroom, an equally panicked figure emerged. It was Lily, but undeniably inhabiting the more substantial, 42-year-old frame of her mother. Her face, Maggie's face, was a mask of profound shock, her blue eyes wide with a terror that spoke volumes. The comfortable, well-worn pajama bottoms that usually hung loosely on her mother now felt restricting, alien, the fabric unfamiliar against her skin. Her steps were clumsy, uncoordinated, her muscles protesting with a stiffness she'd never known. This body, with its subtle aches and unfamiliar curves, felt like a heavy, ill-fitting suit. Mom, is this real? I'm you. And you're me. Lily's voice, Maggie's voice, boomed through the hall, a deep, resonant sound utterly unlike her usual soft murmur. The power in it felt overwhelming, yet she had no control over its sudden loudness. Her throat felt strange, unaccustomed to producing such a rich, full tone. She reached out a hesitant hand, Maggie's hand, towards the figure that was her daughter, yet wasn't. Their eyes met, wide with shared horror and disbelief. It was as if they were looking into funhouse mirrors, distorted reflections of themselves, yet undeniably their own souls staring back. They stood frozen for a moment, two souls utterly disoriented in borrowed skin, grappling with the sheer, mind-bending absurdity of their predicament. Maggie, ever the more pragmatic and action-oriented of the two, even in her shock, was the first to break the stunned silence. The necklace. It has to be the necklace, Lily. The one from the antique shop. Remember when we touched it last night? Her voice, Lily's voice, was frantic, laced with a desperate hope for a logical explanation, however bizarre. She remembered the strange tingle, the almost imperceptible hum. It had to be the cause. There was no other rational explanation for this utter madness. Lily, A surge of adrenaline finally piercing through her initial paralysis, nodded vigorously, Maggie's head bobbing with an unfamiliar weight. Yes! The weird tingle. I thought I was imagining it. Oh my God, Mom, what do we do? Her mind, usually so analytical despite her anxiety, was now reeling, unable to process the sheer volume of impossible information. This wasn't a school project, it wasn't a social interaction she could avoid, this was her life, suddenly turned inside out. The thought of facing the world in her mother's body, with all of her mother's responsibilities, was almost enough to send her back into a full-blown anxiety attack. They rushed back into Lily's room, Maggie, in Lily's body, fumbling for the velvet pouch she remembered setting on the nightstand. Her new, slender fingers felt clumsy as they fumbled with the clasp, but finally, the necklace spilled out. The amulet, crafted from dark wood and inlaid with moonstone chips, lay innocently in her palm, utterly inert, its faint glow from the previous night completely absent. It looked like any other old piece of jewelry. Try it. Try touching it again. Lily, in Maggie's body, urged, her voice resonating with an uncharacteristic urgency. Maybe it'll undo it. With trembling hands, they both reached for the amulet once more, their fingers brushing the smooth wood, the cool moonstone. They waited, eyes squeezed shut, for the familiar tingle, the hum, the distortion. Nothing. Absolute, deafening silence. The amulet remained lifeless, inert, a mute witness to their profound distress. A cold dread began to creep into their hearts. "It's not working, Maggie," as Lily whispered, her voice barely audible, the youthful timbre now tinged with despair. It's just a necklace now." A wave of nausea washed over her. The gravity of their situation, the sheer, horrifying permanence of it, began to sink in. She was a 42-year-old woman, a mother, a coffee shop employee, trapped in the body of her 18-year-old daughter. She had responsibilities, a life she knew, a future she understood. And now all of it was suddenly out of reach. Lily, as Maggie, felt a similar wave of despair, amplified by her inherent anxiety. "We're stuck, Mom," she choked out, her voice, Maggie's voice, cracking with raw emotion. The thought of stepping out the door in her mother's body, facing her mother's job, her mother's friends, her mother's entire life, it was unfathomable. Her social anxiety, usually a low hum, now roared like a tidal wave, threatening to engulf her. How could she, a girl who struggled to order a coffee without panicking, possibly navigate her outgoing mother's world? The thought of interacting with her mother's coworkers, let alone her charmingly persistent boss, George, was enough to make her stomach churn. They spent the next hour in a disoriented haze, pacing their respective bedrooms, occasionally meeting in the hallway for another futile attempt with the necklace. Every touch, every glance in the mirror, every spoken word was a fresh reminder of their predicament. Maggie, observing her daughter's anxiety in her own body, felt a pang of sympathy, even amidst her own terror. Lily, seeing her mother's usually vibrant spirit replaced by her own fear in Lily's younger frame, felt a strange, unsettling connection. The practicalities of the day loomed large, a terrifying monster waiting just beyond their bedroom doors. Lily had school. Maggie had work at the daily grind, the bustling local coffee shop. The real world, with its relentless demands, was about to come crashing down on their impossible reality. This was no longer a philosophical debate about understanding each other. This was an immediate, terrifying immersion. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, or perhaps its wicked sense of humor, had decided that the only way for Maggie and Lily to truly walk a mile in each other's shoes was to literally put them there, without a map, without a guide, and with no apparent way back. The profound disorientation was just the beginning of their extraordinary, unwanted journey. The kitchen, usually the bustling heart of the Turner home, felt like a foreign battlefield that morning. The scent of burnt toast hung heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of fear. Maggie, now occupying Lily's slender, youthful form, stood rigid beside the toaster, a spatula clutched in her delicate hand as if it were a weapon. Every nerve ending in Lily's body, now controlled by Maggie's frantic mind, was hyper-aware of the unfamiliar sensations, the lightness of her limbs, the softer texture of her own skin, the slightly higher pitch of her breath. She tried to make sense of the simple task of buttering toast, but her new, unfamiliar hands felt clumsy, uncoordinated. Her usual morning routine, a well-oiled machine of efficiency, had devolved into a comical, yet terrifying, charade. Lily, meanwhile, grappling with the profound disorientation of being in her mother's more robust, mature body, was fumbling with the coffee maker. Her mother's fingers, typically so adept, felt thick and unresponsive to Lily's anxious commands. The simple act of measuring coffee grounds felt like performing complex surgery. The aroma of brewing coffee, usually a comforting scent, now seemed aggressive, overwhelming her heightened senses. A tremor ran through her, a wave of social anxiety amplified by the sheer absurdity of her situation. She was her mother. Her mother, who effortlessly chatted with customers, managed staff, and navigated the intricacies of daily life with an almost boundless social ease. How could she, Lily, a girl who preferred the quiet solitude of her room, possibly embody that? Okay, deep breaths, Mom, Lily, as Maggie, mumbled to herself, her mother's voice resonating with an uncharacteristic shakiness. She tried to project an air of calm, a task made impossible by the internal chaos. She looked at Maggie, as Lily, a mirroring image of terror. We have to go out. You have school and I have work." The words felt like lead in her mouth. The thought of facing the world, even her own mother's world, in this condition was enough to make her stomach clench. Maggie, as Lily, her own anxiety now a tight knot in her chest, nodded reluctantly. "I know. But how? What do I even say? Lily doesn't talk much. And I talk a lot. A lot." The very idea of having to pretend to be her quiet, socially anxious daughter felt like donning a straitjacket. Her natural effervescence, her need for connection, felt stifled, trapped within this reticent shell. The thought of navigating high school, the buzzing hub of Gen Z trends and teenage drama, as Lily, was profoundly unsettling. She had always found Lily's friends, a quirky, often cliquey bunch, somewhat bewildering. A horn honked outside. Lily's best friend, Chloe, an energetic and perpetually cheerful girl who served as Lily's only reliable bridge to the outside world, was here for their usual carpool. Both Maggie and Lily jumped, their hearts seizing. The outside world was officially knocking. "Oh no. It's Chloe," Lily, as Maggie, whispered, a fresh wave of panic washing over her. She knew Chloe, knew her mother's playful interactions with her. This was going to be excruciating. Maggie, as Lily, despite her internal turmoil, felt a surge of her natural optimism, or perhaps sheer stubbornness. "All right, deep breaths. You can do this, Mom. Just be me. The quiet me. And I'll be you. The you who goes to work." It was a flimsy plan, born of desperation, but it was all they had. They exchanged a final, terrified glance before Maggie, as Lily, opened the front door. Chloe, a cascade of fiery red hair and an infectious grin, was leaning against her brightly painted car, scrolling through her phone. "Hey, Lil. You're gonna be late for math, slowpoke," she called out, then paused, her eyes widening slightly as she took in Maggie, as Lily. "Whoa, Lily, you look different today. A bit more awake? And what's with the outfit? Not your usual comfy hoodie." Maggie, as Lily, forced a small, awkward smile. Lily's face felt stiff and used to such broad expressions. Just trying something new," she mumbled, attempting to mimic Lily's quiet demeanor. The words felt foreign, forced through a throat that wanted to burst into song. She longed to launch into a cheerful anecdote, to ask Chloe about her weekend, to be herself. But she had to be Lily. The quiet Lily. Chloe shrugged, seemingly accepting the explanation with teenage nonchalance. "Okay, suit yourself. Hop in." "Oh, hey, Mrs. Turner," she called out, spotting Lily, as Maggie, emerging hesitantly from the house. "You look great today." Lily, as Maggie, offered a tight, forced smile, her mother's face feeling alien and unresponsive. "Good morning, Chloe," she managed, her mother's voice sounding strained. She quickly hurried to her car, desperate to escape Chloe's gaze and the crushing weight of having to maintain this elaborate charade. As Maggie, as Lily, slid into the passenger seat of Chloe's car, she felt a profound sense of claustrophobia. The small space, filled with Chloe's incessant chatter and pop music, was a jarring contrast to her usual quiet mornings. She forced herself to listen, to respond with monosyllables or nods, trying desperately to recall every detail she knew about Lily's school life, her friends, her schedule. It was an information overload, a crash course in Gen Z culture. She tried to appear bored, aloof, just like Lily often did, but inside, her mind was buzzing with questions, observations, and an almost irresistible urge to engage in conversation. This was going to be tougher than she imagined. Meanwhile, Lily, as Maggie, drove to the daily grind, her mother's trusty minivan feeling strangely large and unwieldy. Her heart hammered with a unique blend of terror and dread. The bustling coffee shop, a place she usually avoided unless absolutely necessary, now loomed before her as her workplace. She parked the car, taking several deep, shaky breaths, trying to mentally prepare for the onslaught of social interaction. Her mother's vibrant personality, her ability to effortlessly connect with customers and charm her way through any situation, felt impossibly out of reach. Stepping into the coffee shop was like stepping onto a stage under a harsh spotlight. The aroma of roasted beans, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversations, it was all too much. Her mother's co-workers, Sarah and Mark, both cheerful and familiar faces, greeted her with their usual warmth. "Morning, Maggie. Looking bright and bushy-tailed today," Sarah chirped, flashing a friendly smile. Lily, as Maggie, managed a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Morning, Sarah," she mumbled, her voice surprisingly soft for her mother's usually boisterous greeting. She tried to project her mother's usual confidence, but her posture was stiff, her movements hesitant. The fear of saying the wrong thing, of being found out, was paralyzing. Then George, the cafe owner, emerged from the back office. George was a man in his late 40s, with kind eyes, a gentle smile, and an undeniably soft spot for Maggie. He was always subtly attentive, always finding reasons to chat, to offer a helping hand. To Lily, he was a pleasant, if somewhat persistent, presence. To Maggie, he was a potential romantic interest she was playfully, if cautiously, considering. "Morning, Maggie." "Early bird, as always," George said, his smile widening, a hint of admiration in his gaze. He offered her a fresh-baked muffin, a gesture he often made. "Made these just for you." Lily, as Maggie, felt a blush creep up her neck, a sensation she recognized as her own anxiety, but now manifesting on her mother's face. She stammered, "Thank you, George. That's very kind." She avoided his gaze, feeling the weight of his unspoken affection like a physical burden. Her mother's life, her mother's social dance, felt incredibly complex and utterly overwhelming. This was far more than just performing a job. It was performing an entire personality, a life she barely understood. The first encounters of the day had plunged them both headfirst into the deep end, forcing them to navigate foreign waters without a compass, armed only with their own ingrained personalities battling against their borrowed identities. The ultimate test of empathy and perhaps endurance had truly begun. Maggie, trapped within the lithe, youthful frame of her daughter Lily, found herself plunged headfirst into the chaotic, vibrant world of Willow Creek High. The sterile scent of disinfectant, the thrum of hundreds of teenage voices, and the incessant pinging of phone notifications assaulted her senses. She walked down the crowded hallway, acutely aware of the unfamiliar lightness of her steps, the way her hair, Lily's long, flowing brown hair, swayed with each movement. Every locker slammed, every whispered conversation, every fleeting glance felt amplified, a cacophony that tested the limits of her newfound introversion. She tried to embody Lily's quiet, observant nature, keeping her gaze down, her shoulders slightly hunched, hoping to become invisible. But her own innate exuberance, her desire to engage, was a restless beast caged within. Her first class, algebra, was a blur of quadratic equations and exasperated sighs from students. Maggie, whose own high school math memories were a distant, fuzzy relic, struggled to focus. Lily was excellent at math, but Maggie found herself utterly lost. She longed to ask questions, to crack a joke to lighten the mood, but remembered Lily's aversion to drawing attention. She sat in silence, furiously scribbling nonsense in a notebook, feigning concentration while her mind reeled. The sheer boredom of sitting still, of not participating, felt like a physical agony. Lunchtime was an even greater challenge. The cafeteria was a maelstrom of cliques, cafeteria trays clattering, and a deafening roar of conversation. Chloe, Lily's ever-present best friend, steered Maggie, as Lily, towards their usual table, a small, somewhat isolated spot with a view of the football field, where a few other quiet, artsy types sat. Maggie, however, found her eyes drawn to a much livelier table, a group of popular girls known for their loud laughter and constant TikTok filming. A pang of her old, social self yearned to join them, to infuse their energy with her own. "So, anything exciting happen with you and Jake Miller last night at the festival, Lil?" Chloe whispered conspiratorially, nudging Maggie. Jake Miller, the school's resident hotshot, captain of the football team, and Lily's secret crush for 2 years. Maggie's heart fluttered, a mixture of Lily's shy longing and her own 40-something amusement. "He was definitely looking at you during the band performance," Chloe added, completely missing Maggie's internal struggle. Maggie, as Lily, felt a strange mix of emotions. Lily's crush on Jake was profound, a silent, yearning admiration. But Maggie, with her adult perspective, saw a handsome, slightly arrogant high school boy. "Oh, nothing," Maggie managed, trying to channel Lily's typical bashfulness. But then, her natural Maggie-ness took over. "He did ask if I was going to try out for the talent show again next year," she blurted out, a flicker of mischievousness in her eyes. It wasn't a lie. He had asked someone standing near Lily, and Maggie's mind had cleverly, or perhaps recklessly, reinterpreted it. Chloe's jaw dropped. "He what?" "Lily, you never told me." This wasn't Lily's usual reaction, but Chloe, caught up in the potential romance, didn't question it. Maggie felt a small, forbidden thrill. This was fun. This was living. She was already subtly bending Lily's carefully constructed reality. Later that afternoon, a spontaneous idea sparked in Maggie's mind. As she walked past the school gym, she saw a group of students attempting a popular TikTok dance trend. A surge of her natural zest for life, coupled with her growing frustration at being so quiet all day, overcame her. "This is ridiculous," she thought. "Lily needs to loosen up. And I need to move." With a sudden, uncharacteristic burst of confidence, for Lily, Maggie, as Lily, joined the edge of the group. She started mimicking their moves, at first awkwardly, then with a growing, uninhibited joy. Her body, Lily's body, felt surprisingly agile, light. She began to improvise, adding her own flamboyant spins and exaggerated gestures, embodying Maggie's irrepressible spirit. A few students stopped, stared, then started laughing, not derisively, but in genuine amusement. "Whoa, Lily! Where did that come from?" one boy exclaimed, pulling out his phone. Soon, someone was filming. Maggie, as Lily, didn't care. She was dancing, truly dancing, for the first time in this body, letting her inner Maggie shine through. The video, titled Lily Turner's Secret Dance Moves, quickly went viral within the school, shocking everyone with "Lily looks totally different." Maggie had inadvertently cracked Lily's carefully built shell, sowing the first seeds of a new perception. Meanwhile, across town, Lily, inhabiting her mother's body, was enduring her own special brand of purgatory at the daily grind. The bustling coffee shop, usually a background hum in her life, was now a sensory overload. The clatter of mugs, the steam of the espresso machine, the constant stream of customers, each interaction felt like a terrifying performance. Her social anxiety, now magnified by the responsibility of embodying her outgoing mother, was a relentless companion. Her first task was to take orders. A kindly elderly woman approached the counter. "Morning, dear. Just a regular black coffee for me, please." Lily, as Maggie, froze. Her mother's voice, usually so effortlessly warm, felt like a foreign instrument in her throat. "Oh, yes. One black coffee," she stammered, her voice thin and reedy despite its deeper timbre. Her hands, Maggie's hands, fumbled with the touchscreen. Her heart pounded. The woman gave her a curious, almost concerned look. George, ever the observant owner, noticed Lily's unusual demeanor. "Everything all right, Maggie? You seem a little quiet today." His tone was gentle, concerned. Lily, as Maggie, forced a smile, a grimace that felt alien on her mother's face. Just a bit tired, George," she mumbled, avoiding his gaze. The thought of having to engage in her mother's usual witty banter with him was paralyzing. Later, a minor crisis erupted. A new barista, a fresh-faced teenager named Leo, accidentally frothed milk onto a customer's jacket. Chaos ensued. Maggie, the true Maggie, would have handled it with a calming laugh, a quick apology, and a complimentary drink. Lily, however, was paralyzed. Her anxiety screamed at her to flee, to hide. But she was Maggie. She had to handle it. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Lily, as Maggie, stepped forward. "Leo," she began, attempting to channel her mother's authoritative yet kind voice. But the words came out sounding formal, almost stern, and her voice, Maggie's voice, trembled slightly. "You need to be more careful. Watch what you're doing." Her tone lacked her mother's usual warmth, startling Leo and even Sarah, who shot Lily, as Maggie, a bewildered look. And we'll get you a fresh jacket," she added to the customer, her eyes darting nervously around the busy cafe. The customer, though appeased, looked slightly confused by Maggie's unusual formality. George, watching the scene unfold, stepped in smoothly, taking over the apology and offering a more genuine, warm reassurance. He then approached Lily, as Maggie later, a subtle concern etched on his face. "Maggie, are you sure you're okay? You're not quite yourself today." He reached out, gently touching her arm. The unexpected contact made Lily jump, pulling her arm back reflexively. I'm fine, George," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. George looked perplexed, a hint of disappointment in his kind eyes. Lily retreated to the back room, a wave of profound shame washing over her. She was terrible at this. She couldn't be her mother. She was failing. Yet, amidst the shame, a tiny seed of realization began to sprout. She saw how effortlessly her mother navigated these situations, how she charmed people, how she led. It wasn't just Maggie's personality, it was her strength, her resilience, her ability to face the world head-on. She recognized, for the first time, the sheer force of will it took to be Maggie Turner. The day, though a social catastrophe for Lily, had inadvertently begun to teach her about her mother's quiet power. Both mother and daughter, inhabiting their new worlds, were stumbling through challenges, learning, and perhaps, slowly but surely, beginning to understand each other in ways they never imagined possible. The aftermath of Maggie's, as Lily's, impromptu TikTok dance rippled through Willow Creek High like wildfire. The video, initially shared by a few curious students, quickly gained traction, its view count skyrocketing. The comments section exploded with a mixture of bewilderment and amusement. Is that really Lily Turner? Since when could Lily dance like that? She totally transformed. For the first time in her life, Lily Turner, or rather, Maggie inhabiting her body, was the undisputed talk of the school, and not for being quiet or anxious. Maggie, observing the reactions from within Lily's body, felt a surge of triumph mixed with a burgeoning sense of unease. Her intention had been to loosen Lily up, to show her daughter that drawing positive attention wasn't inherently bad. And it was working. Students who usually ignored Lily now greeted her, some even asking if she'd teach them her moves. Jake Miller, the football captain and Lily's secret crush, even approached her at her locker, a hesitant smile playing on his lips. "Hey Lily," Jake said, his voice surprisingly soft. "That video, it was pretty cool. I didn't know you had it in you." He genuinely looked impressed, a slight blush creeping up his neck. Maggie, as Lily, felt a thrill. Lily's heart, in her chest, did a little flip-flop. This was it, the moment Lily had secretly yearned for. Maggie, seizing the opportunity, flashed a genuine, confident smile, a smile that was undeniably Maggie's, but radiant on Lily's face. "Oh, just feeling the rhythm," she quipped, her voice still Lily's, but laced with Maggie's playful confidence. "Maybe you should join me sometime, Miller. You look like you could use some moves." Jake chuckled, a genuine laugh that sent a shiver down Maggie's spine. "Maybe I will, Turner. Maybe I will." He lingered for a moment, his gaze lingering on her for a beat longer than just friendly, before heading to class. Maggie felt a surge of accomplishment. She had not only broken Lily's social shell, but had also inadvertently propelled her daughter into the orbit of her longtime crush. This was good. This was exactly what Lily needed. However, later that day, during her art class, a sanctuary Lily usually found solace in, Maggie, as Lily, noticed something peculiar. As she picked up a paintbrush, her hand felt a strange resistance, a slight tremor she hadn't experienced before. The vibrant colors on the palette seemed a little duller, less inviting. She tried to sketch, but the lines felt less fluid, the inspiration elusive. A subtle weariness settled over her, a faint sense of detachment from Lily's body. It was as if the magic, the invigorating surge of youth she'd felt at first, was slowly, subtly receding. Across town, Lily, as Maggie, was grappling with a different kind of consequence. Her tough love approach with Leo, the new barista, coupled with her unusual reticence with customers, had created a noticeable shift in the cafe's atmosphere. Sarah and Mark, her mother's longtime colleagues, exchanged puzzled glances, unsure how to approach their usually warm and approachable boss. The easy camaraderie that Maggie fostered was replaced by a quiet awkwardness. George, ever attentive, was particularly affected. He'd tried to engage Lily, as Maggie, in conversation multiple times throughout the day, offering gentle jokes, subtle compliments, and even practical help. Each time, Lily had recoiled, her social anxiety making her mother's facial expressions stiff and her responses clipped. The gentle flirtation, the playful banter that was a hallmark of Maggie and George's interactions, had completely evaporated. George looked visibly disheartened, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by a quiet confusion. As closing time approached, George approached Lily, as Maggie, by the counter, a serious expression on his face. "Maggie," he began, his voice softer than usual. "Can we talk for a moment?" "Just us." Lily, as Maggie, felt a fresh wave of panic. Her mother's body felt heavy, her palms sweaty. She nodded mutely, bracing herself. She expected a reprimand, an inquiry into her strange behavior. Instead, George took a deep breath. "Look, Maggie," he said, his eyes filled with genuine concern. "I don't know what's going on, but you haven't been yourself all day. You seem distant. And frankly, a little cold. I know we've been building something, haven't we? And I don't want to lose that because you're struggling with something you don't want to talk about." He paused, taking her hand gently across the counter, an action Maggie would have found charming, but Lily found terrifying. "I care about you, Maggie. A lot. And I hate seeing you like this." He looked deeply into her eyes, his gaze earnest. Would you let me take you out to dinner tonight? Just to talk. As friends. Or more, if you'd let me." Lily, as Maggie, was utterly floored. A date? With George? Her mother's boss, who clearly held a deeper affection for Maggie than Lily had ever fully appreciated. Her social anxieties screamed. Her mother's life, her mother's potential romance, had just landed squarely in her lap. She wanted to refuse, to flee, but her mother's body seemed to have a mind of its own. She could almost feel Maggie's spirit, somewhere deep inside, nudging her, urging her to accept. And besides, refusing George outright felt impossibly rude, a breach of her mother's warm, approachable persona. Oh, yes, George, Lily, as Maggie stammered, her voice still shaky, but the words were out. Yes, that would be nice. Dinner. Tonight. George's face lit up, a genuine, joyful smile replacing his concern. He squeezed her hand gently. Lily, internally, was screaming. She had just inadvertently committed her mother to a date. The consequences of her inability to maintain Maggie's personality were quickly piling up. That evening, back at home, both Maggie and Lily sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the air thick with their shared exhaustion and the day's bewildering events. The antique necklace lay between them, still inert, its silver chain catching the dim kitchen light. Chloe says everyone at school is talking about my dance video, Maggie, as Lily, recounted, a weary sigh escaping her lips. And Jake Miller actually talked to me. He asked me out, well, almost. He said I had moves. There was a flicker of genuine excitement in Lily's eyes, a reflection of Maggie's joy, but it was tempered by the creeping fatigue she felt. But I also felt weird today. Like I'm fading a bit. The youthfulness. The energy. It's not as strong. She looked down at her hands, Lily's hands, and they felt a little heavier, a little less nimble than they had that morning. Lily, as Maggie, paled, her mother's usually vibrant face now drawn and tired. You're lucky. I just accidentally agreed to go on a date with George tonight. She buried her face in her hands, her mother's hands, in utter despair. He thought I was sad, or something. And I couldn't say no. He was so genuinely concerned. A fresh wave of anxiety washed over her. And then, I tried to touch the necklace again at work. Just to see. And it did nothing. Absolutely nothing. As Lily spoke, Maggie, as Lily, looked down at the necklace. Her eyes widened. The subtle, iridescent shimmer that had been faintly visible in the moonstone chips yesterday was now almost entirely gone. The amulet looked dull, lifeless, merely an old piece of wood and stone. A cold, hard truth began to settle in their hearts, chilling them to the bone. Mom, Maggie, as Lily, whispered, her voice barely audible, tinged with a terrifying realization. The necklace, it's not just inert. I think it's losing its power. We tried to make it work, but it did nothing. What if we get stuck like this forever? A heavy silence descended upon the kitchen, more profound and terrifying than any argument they'd ever had. The thought, unspoken but clearly understood, hung in the air like a looming storm cloud. The magical hope doi might not be a temporary inconvenience. It might be a permanent prison. And the only key to their freedom, if one even existed, was nowhere in sight. The initial shock had given way to a profound, unsettling fear of the unknown, and the realization that their predicament was far more serious than they had initially dared to imagine. The chilling realization that the antique necklace was not merely inert, but actively losing its power settled upon Maggie and Lily like a shroud of heavy fog. The initial panic of the body swap had given way to a much deeper, more existential dread. The faint, almost imperceptible glow in the moonstone chips had vanished entirely, leaving the amulet looking like nothing more than a mundane piece of aged wood and stone. The hope of a quick fix, of simply touching the necklace again to reverse the magic, had evaporated, leaving them stranded in a terrifying, unfamiliar reality. Stuck? Forever? Lily, as Maggie, whispered, her mother's voice thick with a fear that Maggie had rarely, if ever, allowed to surface. Her anxiety, usually her most personal battle, was now amplified by the overwhelming responsibility of being her mother, and the terrifying thought of remaining so indefinitely. Her hands, Maggie's hands, trembled as she reached out, almost unconsciously, to touch the dull amulet. But how? Why? There has to be a way back. Her mind, typically so prone to overthinking, now raced in a desperate search for answers, a logical loophole in this cosmic joke. Maggie, as Lily, felt a similar cold knot of fear tightening in her stomach. Her own vibrant, optimistic spirit was struggling against the encroaching despair. I don't know, Lily. All I know is that it felt different when we touched it last night. Like it had energy. Now, it feels dead. She picked up the amulet, turning it over in her delicate, youthful fingers. As she did, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. On the back, almost imperceptibly carved into the dark wood, was a faint, swirling symbol. It looked like two intertwined figures, almost embracing, surrounded by delicate script in a language neither of them recognized. "Look at this, Maggie," as Lily pointed, her voice hushed. "There's something carved on the back. Some kind of inscription." Lily, as Maggie, leaned closer, squinting. Her mother's eyesight was, thankfully, still strong. "It looks old. Really old. Maybe it's a clue? A spell? A warning?" Her mind, now in analytical mode, latched onto the possibility. "We need to figure out what this means. This isn't just a random antique. It has to have a purpose." They spent the next few hours poring over old books, searching online databases with their phones, anything they could think of to identify the symbol or the strange script. The internet, usually a fountain of information, offered no immediate answers for the obscure carving. Their efforts were fruitless, deepening their sense of helplessness. The only consistent information they found about body-swapping tales involved magical items, but rarely did they mention the magic fading. As the evening wore on, a different kind of truth began to emerge, one that transcended the immediate crisis. Exhausted and defeated, they slumped in their chairs, the amulet still lying between them. "You know, Lily," as Maggie said quietly, her voice softer now, less frantic, more thoughtful. "Being you, it's really hard, Mom." She looked at her mother's hands, which were now her own. "You're so strong. You deal with so many people every day and you just do it. You're always smiling, always helping. I never realized how much energy that takes. And George, he really cares about you." She paused, a genuine blush rising on Maggie's face. "I felt awful leading him on, but I didn't know how to say no without being rude like I would be. You're so good at connecting with people. And it's not just a performance, is it? It's really you." Maggie, as Lily, felt a pang in her chest, a mixture of pride and a newfound understanding. "And you, Lily," she responded, her voice, Lily's voice, surprisingly gentle. "Being you, it's not easy either. This social anxiety, it's a real beast, isn't it? I always thought you just needed to snap out of it, to be more outgoing. But being in your body, feeling what you feel when people look at me, it's terrifying. It's like a constant battle just to exist outside your room." She took Lily's hand, Maggie's hand, in her own, Lily's hand. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I really didn't understand." A fragile bridge of empathy, forged in the crucible of their swapped identities, began to form between them. The arguments, the misunderstandings, the generational chasm that had separated them for so long began to recede, replaced by a raw, authentic connection. They were truly seeing each other, not just as mother and daughter, but as two individuals grappling with their own challenges, their own strengths, and their own vulnerabilities. It was then, in that moment of profound understanding and shared vulnerability, that a subtle change occurred. The carved symbol on the back of the amulet, which had remained dull and lifeless, now seemed to pulse faintly, a tiny flicker of iridescent light emanating from the intertwined figures. It was barely noticeable, a whisper of magic, but it was there. "Look," Maggie, as Lily, gasped, pointing. "The symbol. It's glowing again. Faintly, but it's glowing." Lily, as Maggie, looked down, her eyes widening. "It's reacting. When we actually talked. When we understood each other." A flicker of hope, desperate and fragile, ignited in her heart. Maybe that's the key? It said, "Understand each other," in the content summary you wrote, Lily thought. Maybe we have to truly understand and accept each other? Just as they were contemplating this newfound possibility, the doorbell rang. Both women froze, their newfound connection momentarily shattered by the intrusion. Lily, as Maggie, remembered with a fresh wave of horror, George. The dinner date she had inadvertently agreed to. "Oh my God, George!" Lily, as Maggie, exclaimed, her mother's voice choked with renewed panic. "I completely forgot. What do I do, Mom? I can't go. I can't pretend to be you on a date. I'll ruin everything. Her social anxiety, which had been momentarily quieted by the deeper revelation, now roared back with full force. Maggie, as Lily, despite her own internal struggle and the looming threat of being permanently stuck, felt a wave of maternal protectiveness and a healthy dose of exasperation. "You have to go, sweetie," she urged, her voice, Lily's voice, surprisingly firm. "You promised him. You can't just leave him standing on the porch. And besides, maybe it's part of it. Maybe you have to face these things to truly understand me. Just try to be polite. And don't spill anything." She remembered her own amusement at the prospect of a date with George. Now it was her daughter's terrifying burden. This, she realized, was the universe's twisted way of forcing Lily out of her shell, into a situation where she had no choice but to engage. Lily, as Maggie, looked utterly terrified, her mother's face a mask of profound dread. But what if I say something wrong? What if I accidentally flirt back? What if he tries to hold my hand? The thought was enough to send shivers down her spine. The social rules of dating, especially for her outgoing mother, felt like an insurmountable labyrinth. "Just breathe, Lily," Maggie, as Lily, coached, trying to sound reassuring. "Be yourself, but a polite, grown-up version of yourself. And for heaven's sake, don't mention the body swap." The absurdity of the situation was almost comical, even in their desperate state. With a final, terrified nod, Lily, as Maggie, slowly, reluctantly, walked towards the front door. The faint shimmer on the amulet seemed to brighten ever so slightly as she stepped away. The date was not just a social event, it was a desperate plea for understanding, a perilous step into the unknown that might hold the key to their return, or condemn them to their swapped lives forever. Maggie watched her go, a nod of apprehension and a glimmer of newfound hope coexisting in her heart. Their journey of understanding had just taken a profoundly personal, and potentially very awkward, turn. Lily, trapped in her mother's body, opened the front door with a heart pounding like a drum against her unfamiliar ribs. Standing on the porch, a bouquet of wildflowers in hand and a hopeful smile on his face, was George. He looked charming in a freshly ironed shirt, his kind eyes radiating genuine affection. Lily, however, felt a wave of cold dread wash over her. Every fiber of her being screamed to retreat, to slam the door, to hide in her room, her mother's room. But Maggie's silent plea, her unspoken lesson about facing challenges, echoed in her mind. "Good evening, Maggie," George said, his smile softening as he offered the flowers. "These reminded me of you." Lily, as Maggie, took the bouquet, her mother's hands feeling clumsy, her cheeks flushing with an intensity that surprised her. "Oh, George. They're lovely. Thank you." She forced a small, awkward smile, trying to channel her mother's warmth, but it felt stiff and artificial. The thought of a full evening of conversation, of intimate gestures, of navigating Maggie's social dance was almost overwhelming. As they walked to George's car, the soft evening air seemed to amplify Lily's anxiety. She felt George's gaze on her, his genuine concern palpable. He opened the car door for her, a gentlemanly gesture that Maggie would have appreciated, but Lily found disconcerting. Inside the restaurant, a cozy Italian bistro in the heart of Willow Creek, every glance from other diners, every murmur of conversation, felt like a spotlight on her. She chose a table in the corner, hoping for a modicum of privacy. George, sensing her unease, spoke softly. "You still seem a little subdued, Maggie. Is everything all right? You can tell me anything you know." His sincerity was disarming. Lily, as Maggie, felt a prickle of shame. She wanted to confide in him, to scream out the impossible truth, but she couldn't. Instead, she tried to answer his questions about her day at the coffee shop, keeping her responses vague, polite, and as un-Maggie-like as possible. She found herself talking about the quiet beauty of the setting sun, the comfort of a good book, the intricate patterns of latte art, topics that were undeniably Lily's passions, but sounded oddly reflective coming from Maggie. George listened patiently, surprisingly captivated by this quieter, more introspective version of Maggie. He found himself charmed by her unexpected depth, her subtle observations, her genuine, if nervous, interest in his own quiet hobbies. He laughed at one point, a warm, genuine sound. "You know, Maggie, I always knew you had a thoughtful side, but you're showing a whole new layer tonight. It's refreshing." Lily, as Maggie, felt a blush creep up her neck. She was being herself, in her mother's body, and George, her mother's potential suitor, was genuinely appreciating it. A tiny spark of confidence, unfamiliar but welcome, began to flicker within her. She realized, with a jolt, that her own quiet nature wasn't a flaw to be hidden, but a unique quality that could be valued. She even found herself making George laugh a few times, a nervous, almost self-deprecating humor that was uniquely Lily's. The evening wasn't a complete social disaster. It was, surprisingly, a small triumph for Lily's nascent self-acceptance. Meanwhile, back at the house, Maggie, as Lily, paced Lily's room, a knot of worry tightening in her stomach. She thought about Lily on the date with George, her heart aching with a mixture of fear and pride. This was Lily's ultimate challenge, her Everest of social interaction. Maggie knew her daughter was terrified, but she also knew this was exactly what Lily needed to grow. As Maggie, as Lily, continued to pace, her attention fell upon Lily's messy desk. Amidst the scattered art supplies and half-finished sketches, she noticed a small, worn leather-bound journal. Lily's private journal. Maggie, usually respectful of her daughter's privacy, felt a sudden, irresistible urge to open it. It wasn't curiosity in a nosy way, it was a desperate longing to understand, to find a clue, a secret, anything that might help them. She opened it to a random page. Lily's neat, elegant handwriting filled the pages, recounting her daily struggles with anxiety, her observations about the world, her dreams, and her deepest, most guarded feelings. Maggie read about Lily's quiet admiration for Jake Miller, her fear of being judged, her secret artistic ambitions, and her profound, often unexpressed, love for her mother, despite their arguments. "Oh, Lily," Maggie, as Lily, whispered, tears pricking her eyes. The depth of her daughter's quiet struggles, the richness of her inner world, hit Maggie with the force of a physical blow. She had been so busy trying to fix Lily, to make her more like herself, that she had completely missed the beautiful, intricate person Lily already was. She had never truly listened. It was then, as Maggie, as Lily, held the journal, tears blurring her vision, that she felt a familiar sensation. The subtle tingle. Not the overwhelming static shock from before, but a soft, warm hum that began in her heart and spread outwards. The room seemed to shimmer faintly, and the amulet, which she had placed back on the nightstand, began to glow, not faintly now, but with a vibrant, pulsating light. The moonstone chips caught the light, gleaming with an inner fire. Just then Lily, as Maggie, walked through the front door, looking tired, but a strange sense of accomplishment radiating from her. George had dropped her off, and the date, though terrifying, hadn't been a disaster. She had navigated it, not as Maggie, but as a more confident version of Lily. As Lily, as Maggie, stepped into the living room, the glowing amulet on the nightstand caught her eye. "Mom, the necklace." Maggie, as Lily, met her gaze, a profound understanding passing between them. I think we found the key, Lily. It's not just about touching the necklace. It's about truly understanding each other, accepting who we are and who the other person is." In that moment, both women reached for the amulet simultaneously. As their hands, now feeling a strange resonance with their own true selves, touched the glowing wood, the light intensified, bathing the room in an ethereal white glow. The hum grew louder, a melodic resonance that vibrated through their very souls. It was an overwhelming sensation, a rush of energy, of self-recognition, of profound peace. And then, with a final, brilliant flash, it was gone. The next morning, Maggie Turner woke up with a familiar groan. Her body felt heavier, her own familiar aches settling back in. She opened her eyes, and there, on her own bedside table, were her reading glasses and her half-finished cup of tea. She looked at her hands, her strong, capable, 42-year-old hands. She was back. Across the hall, Lily Turner woke up with a gasp. Her body felt light, slender, her own. She looked at her hands, her delicate, artistic, 18-year-old hands. She was back. They rushed out of their rooms, colliding in the hallway, both with tears in their eyes and genuine smiles on their faces. "Mom," Lily, as herself, cried, launching into a hug. "You're back. You're really back. Oh, my sweet girl." Maggie, as herself, exclaimed, hugging her daughter tightly. "And you. You're you again." As they separated, their gazes fell upon the antique necklace, which lay on the hallway floor where they had met. It was glowing faintly, a gentle, warm pulse emanating from its moonstone chips. Maggie bent down, picking it up. On the back, the intertwined figures now glowed with a soft, steady light, and beneath it, the ancient script seemed to shift, revealing a faint, almost transparent English translation. "May you always understand and protect each other." A wave of emotion washed over Maggie. "Lily," she whispered, her voice thick with wonder. "This was from your father. I bought it at the antique shop thinking it was just a beautiful old piece. He must have somehow found a way." Her voice trailed off, a tear rolling down her cheek. Their deceased husband and father had left them a final, magical gift, a testament to his enduring love and his hope for their bond. The body swap hadn't been a random magical accident. It was a miracle of family love, a final, tender push from beyond. Lily, looking at the necklace, then at her mother, felt a profound sense of connection to her father and a newfound, deep appreciation for Maggie. The swap had been terrifying, but it had shown her the strength she possessed, the value of her quietness, and the incredible resilience of her mother. Life in Willow Creek resumed its rhythm, but nothing was truly the same for the Turners. Maggie was still Maggie, vibrant, energetic, and prone to boisterous conversation, but now she approached Lily with a newfound gentleness, a deeper understanding of her daughter's inner world. She listened more, pushed less, and offered comfort rather than unsolicited advice. And Lily? Lily was still Lily, beautiful and thoughtful, but the social anxiety that had once crippled her now felt more like a manageable hum. She remembered the date with George, how she had, as Maggie, managed to charm him by simply being herself. The confidence gained from navigating her mother's world, from facing George, from even the viral dance video, had fundamentally shifted something within her. A week later, Jake Miller found Lily at her locker, a genuine, shy smile on his face. "Hey Lily," he said, holding out a single rose. "I was wondering, now that you're back to being, well, the Lily I knew, but also the one who can really dance and be herself, would you want to go to the movies with me sometime?" Lily, instead of recoiling, found herself smiling, a genuine, uninhibited smile that reached her eyes. The lessons of confidence, of embracing her true self, had stuck. "I'd love that, Jake," she replied, her voice steady, her heart surprisingly calm. It was the first time she had dared to open herself up to romance, truly open herself up. And Maggie? Maggie still teased Lily about her date with George. George, while initially confused by Maggie's sudden return to her usual vivacious self, eventually found himself drawn back into their playful banter. He still harbored feelings for Maggie, and the date with Lily as Maggie had inadvertently shown him a different, deeper side of the woman he admired. One evening, he approached Maggie at the coffee shop, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. "So, Maggie, about that dinner date. I think we owe ourselves a proper, real one. Unless you're still feeling subdued." Maggie laughed, a genuine, full-bodied sound, and accepted. The body swap, intended to challenge, had unintentionally nudged Maggie towards a potential romance, a dorky, kind man who had seen an entirely new side of her through her daughter's eyes. The antique necklace now hung on a prominent hook in their kitchen, a silent, glowing reminder of the magic of understanding. It was a testament to the powerful, unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter, a reminder that empathy was the strongest spell of all, and that sometimes the greatest transformations occur not when you change who you are, but when you finally, truly Understand who you and those you love are meant to be. The Turner household in Willow Creek, once a battleground of misunderstanding, was now a sanctuary of acceptance, laughter, and a love that had literally walked a mile in another's shoes.